So welcome to our product success session. We run these every so often to focus on a particular area and to discuss setup and implementation and share with you some best practices. If you have questions, please drop them into the webinar, the Zoom webinar panel, either on the Q&A or the chat. I'll be monitoring both. We are definitely recording this, so if you have to leave, don't worry about it. Or if you want to watch it back or share it after, you will have access to do that. I'm Andrea, for those that don't know me or those that are familiar with me already. I'm product specialist here at ProdPad. I'm part of the product team. And with me today is Wes, who is our US business lead.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. I'm glad I was able to join, and thanks everyone for joining and taking this time. Yeah, I'm the U.S. business lead. I was previously a product manager at Pivotal Labs, doing consulting with large and small companies alike to help them with their product development process. But right now, I help support prospective and existing customers in the North America time zones. All right. Andrew, can you control the polls as well? Or do I need to do that as the host?
We have no polls. I don't know. I think you might. I don't see any polls on my end. I think you may have control over that.
All right. Well, I'm gonna learn this as we go. It looks like we
I do apologize.
Let's launch the first poll, which before we get into this question that's shown on the screen is which area do you work in? So we'd love to understand the representations that we have as part of the webinar. So it looks like there's votes coming in, so it seems to be working.
I can definitely see the poll coming up.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I can't read you back the results. I promise you all that we are generally a lot more organized than this. We've just been experiencing some minor technical difficulties, but we'll get there. We got this today.
So I can actually read back the results because I'm seeing it on my screen. So we do have about 8 from product management. We got 1 from customer success and support, and then 1 who's put other. So I'll go ahead and end that poll. Oh, I guess, can you see the poll results?
I can see the results now. So we've got 80% product management, 10% success, and 1 other.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. And I'll stop sharing that. And then let's go to the next poll. So how many teams do you manage? Let's see, how do I go to the next? Here we go, and I'll launch this one. How many teams do you manage? So it looks like as things are coming in, I'll end the poll in about a minute, but we've got quite a few that are managing 1 product team, but of varying levels of numbers of size of that team. So we'll give maybe 10 more seconds if anyone wants to put in a last vote. All right, so here are the results, Andrea. It looks like we've got about 60% that are managing a team of fewer than 5 people, 30% that manage a team of more than 5 people, and 10% that manage 2 to 3 product teams. So we got some good representation across the board. Oh, did I not share the results? I'm sorry. There are the results.
I didn't want to say anything.
All right, so there's the results I just shared. Okay, that gives us a sense for the audience that we have participating. So appreciate you all taking the time to do that. Okay, let's get into this. So today's session, as Andrea mentioned, is really about how to lead product teams to success using ProdPad. And this, we're going to cover topics that are things like setting your product and portfolio vision for the entire organization and the product teams that you're leading, helping offer strategic guidance, not necessarily dictating the strategy, but giving intent behind the strategy and guiding your teams towards it so they can operate in an autonomous and facile fashion. And then helping your teams drive towards outcomes instead of just the outputs or the activities that they can do, and encouraging collaboration with other functional areas. So as a product leader, it's really imperative for you to encourage that collaboration and ensure that the entire business is taken into account with all of the work that's being done. So as a product leader, there's a number of questions that we feel like you should be asking yourself on a regular basis. So needing to know what the teams are working on right now, what's coming up next. So having insight into that on a regular basis. Also, more importantly than the what is why are these the important things? Why are the teams working on them right now? What decisions were made to prioritize this work over other work? And so it's really understanding the impact that those things are going to have and why now. Also asking, how are you going to measure success as a product team and as an organization? Are these things based on outcomes, or are you measuring success based on how quickly you launch features? So we'll talk a little bit about outcomes over outputs, and then also like what are you doing with these learnings? Are you learning from both successes and failures, and then kind of closing that build, measure, learn loop to iterate on the things? So making sure that you're establishing a continuous learning environment. Also asking yourself, how do you as a leader manage conflict and avoid bias? How do you avoid your not only your opinion, but even just the opinions of your entire organization biasing your decisions without including the customer value in there? And are you data informed? So this is not just data driven, but data informed. So you can check out, Andrea has a blog post about data informed versus data driven on our blog. And data informed is really about understanding the context and all of the information that your customers are using your app with, not just the actual data in your app, but what else are they using to operate it? What's the context? What are the problems they're trying to solve, or the things that they're experiencing on day to day? And then what do you do if your team hasn't yet built up enough trust? Like, how do you handle that situation? How do you get to a place where you trust them to operate autonomously in a way that, given enough vision and guidance on strategy, that they can execute effectively and achieve outcomes for your entire business and for your customers? So we'll get into a little bit of those as we go through this. So let's talk first about product and portfolio vision. So I'm going to share the next poll and ask, how well do your teams understand the vision of your product portfolio? So not just an individual product. And now this could be for if you're just one team, this could be for your product, but really important, how well do those individuals on your team understand the vision? And Andrea, maybe you could comment on the team here at ProdPad and how well do you feel like the vision at ProdPad is established and understood by the team members?
So I gotta be honest and say that this is probably the first team I've ever worked with ever where the vision was actually shared with everyone. And I don't know what your experience has been, but at least for me, we were always told, what the product does technically, and we all knew that. And every quarter, so we got all the numbers and all the sales and all the charts and everything, but nobody ever took the time to sit us down and say, this is the product vision, this is the company vision. These are the ideals that we follow and we work with, and so I think in that sense, PropHead is really, really transparent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I was working at a startup, especially at a smaller company with a visionary CEO, the vision kind of stuck in his head and never really made it to the team. He would verbalize it, but when it came to actually executing on the vision and the strategy, it didn't come into the decision making process, and like it wasn't used as more of a North Star or a guidance like it should be. Okay, well, let's go ahead and end the poll here, and I'll share the results. Can you see the results?
Absolutely. So 71% said they generally understand the vision, and 29% said they saw it on a slide. And that was
Yeah.
it, which is my experience mostly. I saw it on a slide maybe once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I think that's the most common thing I've seen is visions just kind of conceptually it's talked about, but it's not necessarily referenced. And I've very rarely understood someone that could actually talk and recite their vision. It's very rare that it's has that much clarity and is so commonly top of mind. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about how ProdPad can help with this. So one of the big ways is the portfolio canvas and these canvases within ProdPad. And before I jump into the actual app, we'll talk about, and many of you probably have seen this in ProdPad, hopefully have filled them out, but this is really something that can be done not only at the product level, but at the product line and as the entire portfolio. So as a product leader, it's important that the portfolio vision is crafted that talks about the value prop for your entire suite of products or portfolio, the things that you are aiming to solve for your customers and potential solutions that you're going to be presenting them with through your products, and the competitive advantage. Like this is important to position yourself against competitors as well. And how are you going to reach the customers with and additional revenue streams as well as the cost structure, and then also just organizationally what you're doing from a social impact and sustainability perspective. And I would also even talk about accessibility. Like that is a big movement to make sure that everyone has the ability to access and benefit from your app. Now that was at the portfolio vision, and like I mentioned, the product line and the individual product can be used. These are a little bit more like a lean canvas, which is the vision for your product, the description of what it actually is, a high-level strategy or an overview of your strategy for how you're going to achieve that vision or how you'd hope to, and then the value to the actual business. So before I jump into the app, one last thing. This is valuable for managing a large portfolio. I know a number of the participants said they're only managing one team, but if you have multiple products or product lines in ProdPad, we now have the ability to filter your portfolio view to only see those product lines or products that you want in your view. And another thing that was just recently launched is the ability to actually identify favorite products. So I'll show you that actually right now. So can you see ProdPad?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. So if we go into our portfolio view, so I can see we've got our multiple products under a product line. And if I turn on my filters, I can show you, see, I only maybe want to see the property. Uh-oh. Excuse me. All right, let me go back in and I will turn on, okay. So here we can see if I want to see all the property management apps product line, I can focus only on those three products. Or if I'm maybe responsible for again, those three, or maybe the marketing team product, I want to see that as well. So you can filter your view in your portfolio here. And then as you can see, I've already favorited a few of these apps. So I can just click this little star icon to make those favorites. Or if I want to mark the entire product line as a favorite, then all three products would be a favorite product. And this comes into play if I'm using the quick add and I want to add a new idea, then I can see that my favorite products are at the top if I'm trying to associate an idea to a product. You can also, when you're looking through your idea backlog, which I'll just jump into here, there's now some filters that the quick filters has the favorite products. So now all of the ideas are now filtered by only those that are on my favorite products list. So this makes it really easy to manage a portfolio without getting overwhelmed if you have a large number of products in your system. So really supporting big portfolios. Okay. Let's do another poll. So how much effort does it typically take to find out what your teams are currently working on? Andrea, how much effort does it take you to understand what the teams at ProdPad are currently working on?
Well, majorly biased opinion. Because we do use ProdPad, and I mean, clearly everyone here uses ProdPad. But it's really easy. I particularly really like the favorite products. It's made my life really easy in terms of, you know, managing my own stuff. But then if I need to switch to view what's going on with anyone else, then I can just do it with the filters.
And how do you separate out what teams are working on at a very granular level, like task level, versus those that they're working on? Like, what do you typically use ProdPad for? Versus other things?
I for other teams. So I mean, obviously, I use it for myself, and I do a lot of idea spucking and discovery on the ProdPad level. But when I'm looking at other teams, it's just interesting to see on a high level what's happening. Particularly, you know, because I work very closely with the marketing team, just kind of, you know, what themes they're working on or what initiatives they're working on and how those might align with what I need to do and how I might be able to contribute to that.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Looks like we've got quite a few votes, and they look to be across the board. There's the share the results.
There you go. So for the first question, how much effort does it typically take to find out what your teams are currently working on? 63% said a little bit of effort. 25% said a good amount of effort. And 13% said no effort. That's
Okay.
great. And for the second question, how well do you feel ProdPad can help you solve this? 63% said somewhat well. 25% said not any more than any other tools we're using. And 13% said pretty well.
Okay. All right. Well, if any of the participants are interested in talking to any of our team about how we can help make sure that you're very well aware and it minimizes that effort, then definitely reach out. We'd be happy to do that. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about strategic guidance. So we talked first about vision, and now let's talk about the strategic guidance. So really, like that poll question was asking about knowing what that your teams are working on right now, what's coming up next, and why the team is working on those things. So one of the things that I've been following a lot lately is this the concept of a messy middle by John Cutler, and this is about everyone works on a very short time frame, like a time scale of 1 to 3 hours. Like they're working on things that are like a task, right? They're not necessarily taking a big, huge objective or outcome and tackling it all at once. You have to break it down into tasks, right? But it's important that your teams can connect anything that they're working on in the day-to-day and show how that is going to result in the impact for the customer and an impact for the entire business. So it really kind of motivates them, and that there's a good understanding generally about these larger, like longer term outcomes that your vision has, and then there's a good understanding about this 1 to 3 hours. But when it becomes a little bit messier is this middle phase, which is in the the months, weeks to months time frame, and like how you are knowing that you're actually getting there. And there's a number of ways that you can tackle this, but we'll show you a little bit about how we can use ProdPad to help with this. So in order to do that, I'd love to get the participants' insight on this question. In your experience, what is the most helpful way of connecting your team's daily work to the broader vision? So there's a number of different ways of doing this, but would love to see whether what you feel like is the most helpful. And Andrea, how do you how do you connect personally with the work that you're doing on an individual basis on every day to that vision? What helps you there?
Objectives are great.
Mm-hmm.
Those are certainly very helpful. I manage my own roadmap, so again, maybe biased opinion, in that it helps, understand if the initiatives I'm working on are linked up to the right objectives that we are setting across all of our multiple products. And I hope it comes as no surprise to anyone that obviously all of our products have very similar objectives on the now column, so that we're all, moving in the same direction and achieving the same things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I was putting together the poll answers, there are definitely ways. You could say all of the options could be helpful towards doing that. It looks like we'll give another 5 or 10 seconds or so. Looks like we've got a split between a couple of them. So I'll go ahead and end this and share the results. Looks like the objectives is one that is probably the most common.
Yeah, it looks like number one. We then have regular strategy meetings, which makes sense. And then we have a clear vision and strategic guidance, as well as none of the above. I'd love to know what none of the above is, if whoever clicked on that wants to share on the chat.
Yeah, I was curious as well, because obviously this is, or it could even be an other, like there might be something else that's the most valuable way of doing this. Okay, well, while they mull over that, let's talk about how we can use ProdPad to help with this. So I think it's very important to connect all of the pieces together to really craft a narrative around why something is being done. From the bottom layer of this funnel, so to speak, is your customer feedback, right? The problem your customer is experiencing that leads into an idea that you could build that is part of an overall initiative, or really trying to solve that problem as a potential solution to it. That if that initiative proceeds as planned, you should have some sort of a result or an impact from that initiative. That would be your key result that is measuring progress towards your desired objective or outcome. And then those objectives can be tied to an individual product as well as to your entire portfolio. So if you look at an overall portfolio, it ends up looking something like this, where you've got your objectives and key results for your entire product portfolio that are being achieved through a number of different product lines, and each product has their own objectives. They don't all have to cascade necessarily down, but each of those objectives for your product should hopefully be impacting your overall business bottom line and the objectives for your customers as well. So this is what objectives kind of look like in ProdPad, and I'll jump into the app in a second, but this really helps your team focus your efforts. So one of the things that you can sort of do in ProdPad is look, if you kind of see this view, which is a collapsed view of the roadmap, and you squint your eyes, you can kind of look at the colors to see, the now in user engagement. This orange color is definitely a focus currently right now. And then as you get further into the later column, you're dealing with things like onboarding or this luxury rentals portfolio objective here. So you can see generally the theme or the focus that your team is currently working on by looking at those objectives on the roadmap. And then key results really are helping ways that you can measure progress towards that objective. And one of the things I really love about ProdPad is the ability to associate initiatives that you're working on, or these roadmap cards, to that key result. So you can say what initiatives might impact that number, that result that we're tracking, and then you can measure like where that status is, and you can, if there is an outcome of that key result, you can add details around it, so everyone gets a sense for like why results are or are not necessarily being hit. So before I go into that, let me jump in here. And so at the portfolio level, the way that you can add portfolio objectives is right here. And if I jump into an actual product, objectives and key results, I can see that I have product objectives and I have portfolio objectives. And so this is for the individual apartment tracker product. And then I can see the portfolio ones as well. And each of these can be added to roadmap cards. But if I open up, say, this engagement objective, I can see that there's a property listings views key result target of 20%. And then if I can show the roadmap cards. If I want to add a new card to this key result, I can say there's some FAQs on the website that we wanted to okay, there's no roadmap cards there. Now I can just scroll through here and say, oh, yeah, this understanding their data is actually a card that will contribute to that as well. And then when I get a chance to, maybe this is targeted by Q3 and we're doing a Q2 review, can say, well, this is actually behind. And then I can say, we didn't achieve it for X reason, right? And then save that status change. And it will then go into our status change comments for this entire objective. So I can see all of the different results and how they've changed over time. And now that those can be done for the product and as well as the portfolio objective. Okay, now let's do another poll. How well, let me just make sure I get this on the screen first. How well do your roadmaps communicate the outcomes you hope to achieve and not just the features that you are doing? Now, Andrea, this is probably going to be a biased question for the ProdPad team, but I feel like that's something that that is a focus for our team here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've actually changed the way that we work a little bit over the last few months since our new senior product manager started. Obviously, we're on different teams, Wes, but at least for us on both the help and the ProdPad app, we started writing all of our initiatives as hypotheses, so that we know, what it is that we are trying to achieve, why, and hopefully what the expected outcome is, so that when the time comes, we can actually record that outcome properly. So everything on our now column they're more solid statements because we've gone through that discovery. Anything on the next column is, can we do this in order to achieve that? And everything on the later column is more, how can we do this in order to achieve X? So as they go from later, next, over to the now column, they become more and more defined. Obviously, as we're on that validation and that discovery and those interviews with our customers.
Yeah, I really like that, because the how phrasing or the how might we is aligned with like a design thinking, like doing discovery in that later column, like how might we solve this problem, versus the middle column has a little bit more clarity. The next, can we do this, and is it actually going to truly solve that problem well? And so we can start experimenting and testing on that in the now column. Yeah, and on the customer team side, we like to focus to almost identify the initiatives based on our desired outcome by asking what might be preventing us from achieving the desired outcome. And so that would then be phrased in the form of a problem that might be preventing that outcome. And then obviously those need to be tested with some potential solutions, which are the ideas on the card. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end this poll. It looks like, what do you think about these results, Andrea?
So we have 57% that said they don't. All of our roadmaps describe features. Can we get every single one of you that answered that on our roadmap clinic? It is a free session that we offer. I'm actually going to pop it into the chat, and I highly, highly recommend that you all book that in. roadmap clinic. Please, guys, get on that. It is an absolutely free resource. It's a free meeting that we offer so that we can help you set up your roadmap to not be feature driven and really get the most out of using ProdPad. And if you get lucky, you might even get to chat with Jana herself. So please, every single one of you, those 57%, those 4 people, get on there. 29% said somewhat well. I wish my roadmaps could focus on outcomes, but this happens only occasionally. Get on that roadmap clinic too. And one of you said pretty well. So good on you, that one person.
And I would say that please join a roadmap clinic, not just for saying, okay, we need to focus on outcomes, but also we could give advice on how to handle the situations around change management that sometimes we recognize that stakeholders are saying, no, we must have all these features. I need to know when these features are going to be delivered. And we would love to kind of brainstorm with you about strategies for how to handle that situation. All right. Well, thanks for reading those results, Andrea. Let's talk about those roadmaps. And what does this look like from a portfolio's perspective? So if you're obviously managing multiple products within a portfolio and you want to get a view of that. So the way that portfolio roadmaps look in ProdPad are, you see one product and then the now, next, later, and you can see the objectives that are being worked on, the problems to be solved there, and then the next products are you can scroll down to see your entire portfolio. And again, you can filter this view to look at only the ones that you care most about. So if I jump into the app itself and I go into see there's a link here for viewing the portfolio roadmap. And if I collapse this, or let's just do the collapsed view, turn off the filters, then I can see for the apartment tracker product, here's what it looks like, and I can scroll down through my entire portfolio. And again, we recognize that you may be reviewing your portfolio at different levels of detail, so you can always control how much of each of these roadmap cards gets displayed, whether that's just the title and description and objectives, showing the ideas and their status in the development tool, tags. We often like to use tags to highlight if there are areas of dependency. You can link on cards to other cards on the existing product or even on a different product in ProdPad. If there are major releases that this initiative is part of, it's good to call that out as well. And then the impact and effort and assigned product managers that might be pushing this initiative forward. So that's how you can kind of take a look at. And then also I will say that when you are going to publish a version of your roadmap with our roadmap publishing section, you can select which products get included. If you want to have the entire portfolio, just select this product portfolio, or if you want to create a roadmap that is a selection of individual products or entire product lines, you can do that as well. So you really get a chance to create views of your roadmaps that are shareable, you can protect with passwords, that even focus on only certain objectives like user growth. So you can have a roadmap that's focused on that. And then through this, you can manage the different versions of your roadmap that you have and which products they're for. All right, jump back into the slides. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about driving towards outcomes over outputs. So really this comes down to how you're measuring success. Is that based on outcomes, and what are you doing with the learnings from that? Okay, let's talk about the next poll question. So as a product leader, which of the following is most important for you to know? We recognize that it's helpful if you know all of these things, but if you could only know one thing, which of these things would you choose? Andrea, I'm going to ask a different question for you here. Like, where in your experience, what are the more commonly requested things that you've seen stakeholders ask for, like of these kind of things?
I mean, I think the typical one is, when is this going to be done? Mm-hmm. And this comes from both, executives and the rest of your team.
Mm,
other stakeholders. And I find I've been in that position of being like, when is this going to be done? When is this going to be ready? And I think it comes from the uncertainty of not knowing what else is happening and why it's happening.
mm,
So I've been on the other side of, the product manager life, and I think that nervousness came from the roadmap wasn't being shared, or if it was being shared, it wasn't always accessible. And so it was almost like the rest of the team was flying blind and not really understanding what was happening. So having a date kind of made it safer,
mm.
for the rest of us, of having some sort of connection to the product and what was happening, so that when we did talk to our customers, we could say something other than "I don't know."
Mm-hmm.
um, but obviously, since being a ProdPad, we're a lot more transparent. The roadmap is available to everyone. Um, and even when a customer, because we still get asked, do you know
Mm-hmm.
when this might get done? And I go, well, realistically, I can't tell you. But I then have the opportunity of saying, these are all the other things that we're working on. These are our
Mm-hmm.
current, objectives and our current focus. So that communication just becomes a lot easier. And I don't think anyone in the team is, you being part of the customer team, I don't think you're desperate to know when exactly something is coming, because we have that level of transparency.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's definitely the customer side of things, and letting customers know like when it's difficult to not be able to tell them exactly when, but at the same time, you can give them more kind of the time horizons, right? It's like we are currently working on this, so you can expect it soon, versus we still are needing to do more discovery on this. Would you like to be part of that discovery, right? And then from an internal perspective, like our marketing team is really it's helpful to see from and to hear from the product team upcoming things that maybe aren't necessarily launching this week, but we know that we'll need to plan ahead for. And so it kind of facilitates that conversation to plan ahead if there are campaigns or initiatives or customers that need to be contacted when new functionality does get released. Okay, well, here are the results.
So 57% said why certain features were built, so more about the why.
Mm-hmm.
29% said how many and what features will be delivered in the next release, and 14% said when.
Okay.
So that's actually quite good, all things considered.
Yeah. And yeah, and that's, I think, one of the things I've experienced in my past as a consultant and other things is that even the product leader at a product team level can be really like this poll is showing, really valuing the why and understanding the prioritization. But the struggle is oftentimes when the stakeholders are not caring as much about the why as the product team does. So I think that's where you see this more commonly. When is something going to be delivered? But encouraging, definitely, these poll results. Okay, so the way that in ProdPad that we kind of help focus on the why is to phrase these roadmap cards, titles and descriptions, as like problems, right? Identifying what is the problem and potentially a hypothesis on how to solve that. And the hypothesis might be contained in some of it in the description, but also the ideas that are on a card can represent potential solutions to it. But what's really important is to identify for the organization and those that you're communicating the roadmap with is what problems are being solved. And then the assumption is if you solve that problem, the objectives that are on that card should improve, right? You should start at least making progress towards those desired objectives. And that's why a roadmap card in ProdPad can contain objectives, problem to be solved, hypothesis on how to solve it, and even ideas or ways that you might solve it and test that. Now, it's also important to make sure that you are identifying the appropriate problems and that you're doing and conducting discovery before it goes into development, and then also measuring that whether you actually did solve the problems. Have you validated that those truly solve the problems for your customers? And the way that we do this in ProdPad is setting up workflow stages that are not just your development workflow, but that have pre-development discovery stages that might include designs, some maybe some discovery research, prototyping, and then a ready for development type column that is really doing that final detail adding and specking out before the developers pick it up and it gets synced with your development tool. But then also after development is done, just because the developers say it's done doesn't mean that there's additional things that the product leaders need to make sure happen. And that might be in, launching press releases, contacting customers who've requested it. So you get essentially a to-do list of different customers that you should let them know that it's available, ask them to join a beta program, etc. And then just as important is measuring how successful your hypothesis was, right? Was the initiative that you did it truly solve that problem, or was it a failed experiment that you might need to learn from? And one of the ways that you can track that in ProdPad is when that roadmap card gets moved from the now column into the completed column, then you can add your details about that outcome to the box on that card. So this is one of the few areas in ProdPad where we actually have a date. So it's like, when did that initiative complete? So that's essentially your baseline of like when you started measuring these results that are shown on this slide. And so that is, if I jump back into ProdPad. So if I take, say I take this card, I can actually drag this to the left and move it into the completed column. I think I may not have done that properly. It will, let me just take this one. Drag it into the completed column. And you got some fun little confetti, and then now it has this details about the outcome of completing this card. So did we, by help these initiatives to help the customers understand the product with educational materials, now let's add details about that. So user growth was 10% over the last 3 months. So we're starting to see improvement in this user growth. So I would encourage everyone to look at your completed columns. And in fact, I'm going to just move this back into the now column. So you can look at all of the completed initiatives over the last 3 to 6 months, more than 6 months ago, and see, if I go into each of these, I can look at the details about the outcomes of that card, of completing that card. And you can actually publish this now with our roadmap publishing. Any of these roadmaps that you're looking at, if you take this completed view and save it, and then you can create a embed code or a URL to publish that completed. In fact, that's what we've done on our website. You can see some of the recently completed and launched initiatives on the ProdPad website. Okay, and then one other thing, I'll just show you our ideas workflow stage. And so there's in your account, you should have already had some initial ones set up, but you can create customize these to your desired extent to match with your workflow. But like I mentioned, having some discovery and design or early stage pre-development stages, and then you can see even after the done column from your developers, you have a beta program, contacting customers, failed experiments, and other things. So it's good to set these up, and like anything, you can filter to focus on a specific workflow stage. So if you want, say, all right, these are all the things I want to contact customers about, and just work through sending information to them as well. All right, back into the slides, and time for our next poll. Let's see. So how much of a problem is it for your teams to avoid bias in their decision making? This is a tricky one. I think this is something I see a lot. That is, first you have to identify it, and then you have to actively work to avoid it. So I'd love to hear what participants have experienced at their organizations. Andrea, what's the experience like on the product team at ProdPad?
Wow, that's a huge question, isn't it? I think first of all, everyone suffers from bias, and I almost want to say that's okay. Bias, in a sense, adds what's the word I'm looking for? Diversity, right? So when you're approaching a problem, you have that diversity that's still available to you, which is a good thing. But at the same time, bias is also a bad thing because you want to be able to run the right discovery for it. Um, and I think particularly because I think 80% of our team are product managers, we all have very strong opinions about things, which is cool. But at the same time, it adds to our own bias. And more than once, we found ourselves in a discussion where somebody will say, okay, cool, but what problem are we trying to solve? And everyone kind of stops and goes, oh, you're right. So it happens to everyone. It happens, to the best of us, to the worst of us, to everyone. Bias is always just going to be there. I think the important thing is that someone is always there to go, okay, cool, but what problem are you trying to solve?
Sure.
That will generally be Jana.
Mm-hmm.
She's known for dropping that negative wisdom. Even if you answer, it's a huge problem. Know that it's okay. I think the important part is that you have, that one person, or you still have that sense of saying, okay, but wait, let's take a step back for a second.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and end this poll. We have the 2 questions for basically the bias question and then how well you feel ProdPad can help you solve this. So what we hear?
Yeah, for the first one, how much of a problem is it? 50-50 split. So 50% said not that much, we're aware of our biases, and the other 50% said a big problem. We often make opinion-based decisions. For the second one, how well do you feel ProdPad can help you solve this bias? 50% said somewhat well, 33% said pretty well, and 17% said a product management tool can't help with that. Interesting.
Yeah, well, I would love to show you how I think ProdPad can help with that. So thank you all for sharing your perspectives there. I think one of the ways, and Andrew, you already alluded to it, which is like gathering information and feedback from everyone else, everyone on the team. So I think one of the ways that we can do that is to make sure that we are driving home the point that there's customer problems we are solving and that we've collected input from customers and their feedback, not necessarily our own opinions. And in ProdPad, what that looks like is connecting feedback to ideas. So we actually have, as shown here, a list of customers who've given feedback that a FAQ help doc would be valuable to them. They really need to understand, they've got questions about, and it ties into that understanding the product. And so then any idea that we're working on isn't just I think it'd be great if we created this FAQ help doc, but now we can actually justify it. We can justify it with the customers who've requested it. And if we go into ProdPad, the customer profile, we can actually see how, what personas those customers represent, what the companies and the value of those companies as customers represent. So it really helps us reinforce that we're not necessarily building just based on what we think, but actually that it is driven by customers. And one other way that we can do this is to make sure that you are, as a product leader, actively participating in discussions, right? As Andrea was mentioning, Jana saying like, what problem are we trying to solve? That may be in Slack, but it also may be in ProdPad. And by the way, we can actually do a lot of that in Slack by just creating threads in Slack discussions that will push into ProdPad automatically with our Slack app integration. So I'll show you briefly, because I know we're running short on time, just how you can take feedback and link that to ideas, because I think this is probably one of the most important things. If you have a backlog of feedback and maybe you've got a few that are related that all 3 of these pieces of feedback, I know there's an idea, so I can bulk update. And I can either find an existing idea, so Google Maps, okay, there's ideas there, or if I want to just create a new idea for this feedback, then I can create a new idea for that. And then that will automatically link those 3 pieces of feedback to the idea there. Also, if you are in an individual idea, and so I'll just jump into one randomly, and then there maybe isn't existing customer feedback, but I know I can actually link to some existing feedback or add brand new feedback if I'm talking to one of these customers and Chris Rodriguez wants a personal profile. So that's a way of doing that. Okay, For the interest of time, I'm going to jump back into the slides. We're almost done. Another poll. This is our last poll. So how many different prioritization methods exist at your organization across different teams? Andrea, I'm actually curious to hear your perspective, because I'm not necessarily sure. What's your experience at ProdPad in terms of the number of prioritization methods?
I think there's different ones, and I think that's okay because it depends on where in the workflow those ideas are.
Mm-hmm.
So at least
Okay.
for us, at least for me, the first thing I'll do is the opportunity solution tree,
Mm.
um, which is a framework. And then after that, we'll assign relative impact and effort. And then after that, we'll add objectives. But nothing is necessarily moving forward. Does that make sense? So
Mm-hmm.
we need to understand obviously how much work it implies, but that doesn't mean that it's approved for work. Objectives obviously need to be added to those initiatives. So we have different ones based on where in the workflow things might be, and I think that's totally okay. I mean, prioritization methods depend on a variety of things, from team size to growth stage to are you running experiments, are you running discovery? I mean, there's so much, and that's why I don't believe in, I might get killed here a little bit, but I don't think weighted scoring works. Or like even RICE, I don't think it works because it's implying that you already have done all of this.
Yeah.
Right. So those frameworks really focus on, you've already done discovery, you've already done experimentation, like you know what you're doing. And the reality is in product, you don't really know what you're doing just yet. It's like, that's why ProdPad is there, is to help you experiment and figure out all of those things. So
yeah, it sounds like there are a lot of different ways, and that aligns with the results here.
Yeah, so 50% said everyone has their own way of prioritizing, 25% said 2 to 3, and 25% said just 1.
Okay. Well, one of the ways we do that at ProdPad to prioritize is using this impact and effort chart, right? And that is the ability to assign an impact to your business and your customer to an idea and or a roadmap card, and then an effort that's more than just the development effort, but getting it across the finish line and through your organization, whether that includes compliance or legal reviews. But as you mentioned, it depends because there are a lot of different factors. And so I know even at ProdPad, our customer team has different a rubric by how we assign impact and effort scores. And so this is just an example from one of our larger customers that have assigned, like, what does a small impact actually look like when it across different factors of gain creation, pain relief metrics, and the same with effort. Technical effort, design effort, and business effort have to all kind of be combined into this effort score. So what does that look like? Create a standard way of doing this. And the last thing to help with managing your teams and giving them like an ability to kind of operate autonomously is using our integrations as a leader to have visibility into what's happening, but not necessarily distracting or interfering in the process. So we have a lot of different integrations with development tools, with team communication and collaboration tools like Slack, Trello, and Zapier provides a lot of different ways to integrate with and provide feedback and discussions as a leader. So I would definitely recommend taking advantage of those. So that's it. I think we've talked through like the benefits of using ProdPad as a leader, really is aligning on the vision and strategic intent across the organization, connecting day-to-day work to their impact, measuring success based on outcomes and outputs, identifying opportunities to align across teams, and really standardizing processes around a single place where you can capture all of your information so everyone can go to it as the source of truth. I know we're running up on time, but maybe if there are any questions with the remaining participants or examples to share, feel free to drop it in the chat.
We'll give people a couple of minutes. Don't be shy. Say, why don't we, I'm going to try something that we tried in the webinar last week. Why don't we all just say hello? Just so that we know that you're there, that you're listening. That might be a good icebreaker. If not, you can just, jump in straight with your questions if you have any. If not, we can just keep talking. Hello. That was Wes. I'm like, oh, great, someone answered. It's just Wes.
Oh,
There we go. Hey,
thank you,
Ryan.
Ryan.
See, it is a good icebreaker. I'm going to continue using that. Stole it from Adam last week. At least one person said hello, so that's fantastic. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, this is the right time to ask it. If not, I suppose we can wrap things up.
And just remind everyone to take advantage of the free roadmap clinics and get a
Oh my
chance
God,
to
I
talk
just
to us.
realized that I added it to all panelists, not to all members. I'm gonna, not attendees, I'm gonna send that again. That is the link to the roadmap clinic. Apologies, I sent it to the wrong segment in the chat, but now you have it. You're very welcome. So you can link in some time, as Wes said, just to learn not just how to make your roadmap more outcome focused, but also how to help transition everyone in your team to understand basically how to work with it.
Yep.
Excellent. I guess thank you everyone so much for joining, and we will see you on the next one.
Thank you, everyone. Talk to you soon.